Good morning. We'll try this again. Good morning and welcome to this worship service of Midcoast Presbyterian Church. On behalf of Pastor Diane Hoppy Hugo, we welcome you to this service. Pastor Diane is away this week on study leave, so I will be your service leader today. My name is Ruth Cook. It is our tradition that as we start this service, if you have a candle, please take a moment to light the candle and remember that the light is the light of God. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome the light. Let us take a moment to take in a deep breath. Take in all of God's wonder, and as we let the deep breath out, let us let out all of the troubles that we have been holding on to this week.
The first reading this morning is Psalm 111. Praise the Lord. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart. In the company of the upright in the congregation, great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who have pleasure in them. Full of honor and majesty is his work, and his righteousness endures forever. He has caused his wonderful works to be remembered. The Lord is gracious and merciful. He provides food for those who fear him. He is ever mindful of his covenant. He has shown his people the power of his works in giving them the heritage of the nations. The works of his hands are faithful and just. All his precepts are trustworthy. They are established forever and ever to be performed with faithfulness and uprightness. He has sent redemption to his people. He has commanded his covenant forever. Holy and terrible is his name. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who practice it. His praise endures forever. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. Our second reading today comes from the book of Mark, chapter 1, starting at verse 21. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then, there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth?" So, you may remember the movie or the musical Oliver, where in the opening scenes, the workhouse boys start singing about food, glorious food, imagining a banquet as they are waiting in line for their gruel. They may not enjoy what they are about to eat, but they are taking part in a communal gathering around a meal. Think of the meals that you have shared with your own family. I still have vivid memories of many of Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner when my grandparents were still alive. After the meal was finished, there was my grandma in the kitchen picking every ounce of meat off the turkey carcass for later use. Having raised a family in the Depression, she knew how to make use of every available resource to keep her family fed. I also think of the many potlucks that have been shared in our fellowship hall at Midcoast Presbyterian Church. I know, Presbyterians and potlucks, that's got to be a punchline to at least a couple of jokes. I can still hear our dear friend Lenore Stanton hollering, Family, hold back, reminding those at the front of the line to save something for those at the back of the pack. And of course, the Bible makes many references to food. We know of the Israelites receiving manna in the desert in their many years of wandering before reaching the promised land, and Jesus's feeding of the 5,000 with loaves and fishes. Most importantly, the Last Supper, where Jesus took the bread, broke it, gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And then pouring the cup, saying, "This is my blood, the cup of salvation. Drink ye all of it." These actions of Jesus make the transition from literal food to spiritual food tangible. In chapter 55, the prophet Isaiah exhorts us to come, buy, and eat without money and without price. So, what feeds your soul? Where is your safe space and your safe place? Now, we human beings are our own worst enemies when it comes to listening to our internal dialogue of self-doubt or not being good enough. A young poet I know, and many of you know as well, once wrote these words: "Fear is what lives in these woods and in the cartilage between my ribs. In the hollow in my chest, dread has started to rearrange furniture. Doubt is what lives in my fingertips and quivering lips." So how do we change that narrative so the unclean spirit does not reside in us like the man that Jesus encountered in the temple in Capernaum? That incident is only the first encounter Jesus has with an unclean spirit. Later in Mark, Jesus meets a man with a legion of unclean spirits and drives the spirits out into a herd of pigs who then drown in the Sea of Galilee. By today's medical standards, one or both men may have been diagnosed with schizophrenic tendencies, or at the very least, some mental health issues. As a child of a parent with mental illness, I've had some personal experience with the effects of the disease. My mom was always someone who was caring for others and had trouble saying no. I have to wonder what insecurities made her think that she wasn't doing enough and therefore needed to clean the house at 3 a.m. or her kids would be taken by the health inspector. Such is the insidious nature of mental illness. COVID-19 has been a cruel mistress and has wreaked havoc on life as we know it in this past year. How much more so on those whose lives were already marginalized by socioeconomic status or mental health issues. Those who were barely making ends meet at minimum wage jobs may have been forced to leave those jobs to care for children when child centers closed. They may have lost their jobs altogether, or may have lost access to their health care or social services provider. They have lost their safety net and may feel adrift and alone, facing the uncertainties of the future. Where is their safe space? It's hard to feed one's soul when you are worried about putting food on the table to feed your family. But amid all the despair, there is hope. Vaccines are beginning to roll out to help combat the pandemic, and we are learning to do business and to do church in a new way. We continue to work at being a Matthew 25 church, caring for the least of those by providing a monthly meal to the Tedford shelter, supporting the native farmers with our pumpkin patch, and speaking up and speaking out for those whose voices cannot be heard. We want to be that safe place, that safe space where one's soul can be fed and renewed. I echo the words spoken by a young lady in a mustard-colored coat with a red headband on the steps of the Capitol. Yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. Our road to that safe place may not always be smooth, but we do not travel that road alone. We know God is with us and will reach out a hand to steady us when we falter or redirect us when we stray. We only have to ask. So, what feeds your soul? For my dad, it was exploring North America with my mom at his side, camera in hand, and the Airstream Silver Bullet being pulled behind them. Or sometimes just hanging out at a campground with the local camping group with an occasional meeting of the Mark Twain Literary Society. 5-card stud, jacks are wild, coins only. For me, it's good music. Think Handel's Messiah, Saint-Saëns' Requiem, or Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, good books, stunning works of art, and natural beauty in all shapes and sizes and colors. But most of all, family. The family I was born into, my circle of friends far and near, my audiology peeps at work, and my Mcpc church family.